Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So first, let me thank you, Honourable Speaker, and the Secretariat for allowing this question to be carried over from yesterday. Because of some official engagements, I was unable to be in Parliament last night. We had the New Zealand Defence Secretary and his team with us, and they have left again this morning. They were here over the last 2 days, Mr. Speaker. I wish to acknowledge the Honourable Member for this question. Very relevant, very important, very applicable, given the challenges that we face today. And I hope that all Honourable Members will listen carefully and take responsibility as well in disseminating information and being alert and aware to what's happening around us, and most particularly, if we can work together with the authorities concerned, because this is a major issue that we all face. Mr. Speaker, sir, and for the benefit of the general public and all honourable members, when we look at our general security architecture, conventionally, the threats are, you could say, very low. You know, the possibility of a conventional attack against Fiji and its interests. But the biggest threat to security today, not only for Fiji, but probably in most countries, are what we call non-traditional threats. For us in the Pacific, consistent with the Boer Declaration, we have identified climate change as the biggest threat that we face. That's a non-traditional threat. 2, transnational crimes. And this Palemo Convention that I'm going to answer today, Mr. Speaker, sir, is about the Palemo Convention. It's about the Convention against transnational organized crime. Because the biggest contrast in society today, and unfortunately, is between the civil and the uncivil. We are supposed to be civilized, and we have progressed so much. But unfortunately, there are still elements within our society, and this is a fact, and this is a reality. And unfortunately, it's something that we cannot control, but we need to monitor and perhaps keep to a minimum if possible, is the uncivil amongst our communities, Mr. Speaker, sir. And most of these groups are involved in organized, I say again, Mr. Speaker, sir, organized transnational crime. It's very, very important, Mr. Speaker, sir. There are 2 major components to the Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. One is the Palemo Convention. And Palemo Convention particularly is the protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea, or air. This was adopted by the UNGA in Resolution 5525. I will not go into those details, but Mr. Speaker, sir, this came into force around 2004. But this is what I want to say about the Palemo Convention. It deals with the growing problem of organized criminal groups who smuggle migrants, often at the risk of the migrant, but bringing profits and gains to the perpetrators, to the offenders. It will become clearer as I delve further into the issue, Mr. Speaker. The other component is the Vienna Convention, which mainly deals with illicit trafficking in narcotic drugs, and of course arms as well, Mr. Speaker, sir. But for Fiji, if I can now focus on the question, we acceded to the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, or more commonly known as the Palemo Convention, on the 19th of September 2017. So it took us, this came into force in 2004, if I remember correctly. But it took us such a long time to accede to the Palemo Convention. Particularly, Mr. Speaker, sir, I will explain the logic behind it. It's simply because when we deal with transnational issues, it involves a lot of cross-border issues as well. And people who understand security will have a lot of, will better understand this perhaps. And therefore, there's a lot of involvement, and therefore we have ministries of foreign affairs involved. We have Interpol, and so many agencies, because most of the issues are cross-cutting, overlapping, and therefore the coordination between all of us. And not only that, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have our own sovereign laws. Perhaps this is an area for those that has been following the US report on human trafficking. This is one of the issues that we have with Fiji, because they want to impose their laws on Fiji's sovereign laws, because they have gone ahead, well ahead of us, in changing their laws over the years because of the change in the dynamics of security. But we here, not only Fiji, but most of the region, our laws are still archaic. And it's not suited to it. This is something that the Honorable AG was talking about. When there are changes externally, we have to look at changes within. And in most cases, we'll have to change the legislations first, and then we will change the policies as well. And then the strategies and the activities will come into line. So this is why, Mr. Speaker, sir, it took so long for Fiji, because this is a transnational issue. And it's a global issue as well, Mr. Speaker, sir, before we zero it down to the local setting, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm thankful that this is the first question for this morning because of its relevance and, of course, why it's so important to all of us. Three major components, we call it the three main Ps when it comes to this protocol. One is the protocol to prevent and suppress and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, or known as the Trafficking in Persons Protocol. We've had instances in Fiji where people have just been charged recently for trafficking people. I will not go into the details, Mr. Speaker, sir, but it's common knowledge. People have been arrested and, of course, brought into court, prosecuted, and most of them are serving their time as well now. But perhaps the bigger danger, if I may digress a bit here, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is why I've said that it's very, very important that we monitor our communities, and particularly our children. Mr. Speaker, sir, in some countries, there's a relation between drugs and trafficking. In some countries, they attack the vulnerable. They bring, saying that this is a performance enhancement drug, particularly to farmers. And then the farmers who have no money start taking this. And then they come in the name of performance enhancement. You take it so that you can increase your productivity because it's good for the country. You'll get more exports out of your products. Come a time, the farmers are addicted. And then when they are addicted, this is when those behind this, the uncivil, start demanding for money. And they know that these farmers don't have money. And therefore, They have already done their work. The farmer has $3. Okay, you don't have the money, you can't pay. Why don't you give me $3? Your $3, I'll provide employment for them. And these $3 will be arranged for jobs abroad. Do your Google or go to YouTube instances where Kenyan women are trafficked into India in the promise of jobs. Once they arrive, passports are confiscated, and then claims against all the costs. It costs you $27,000 to bring you from Kenya to here. You'll have to pay me this money. How do I pay the money? I was coming for a job. Given makeups, everything. There's a pickup coming at 6 o'clock, and there'll be clients waiting, Mr. Speaker, sir. Protocol to prevent, suppress, punish the trafficking in persons, especially women and children. I hope I've covered enough to justify the importance of this Palemo Convention, Mr. Speaker. 2 is the smuggling of migrants by land, sea, and air. In Fiji's case, we have a porous border, but we are now signing with our partners on ship rider agreements, air reconnaissance, and we are also looking at the possibility of using drones. Let's move with technology so that we can better influence. We can better influence our areas, Mr. Speaker, sir. And of course, a protocol against the illicit manufacturing and trafficking in firearms, their parts and components and ammunition as well. That's known particularly as the Firearms Protocol. Very quickly, Mr. Speaker, sir, on the Protocol on Human Trafficking and Smuggling of Migrants Protocol, this is a more important one for Fiji, although we do not want to dilute the threat, particularly with firearms and the components as well. But I think of the two protocols, this is more of the bigger challenge for us, the smuggling of migrants protocol. So on this, I am pleased to say that government through my ministry has taken great strides to enhance our efforts to combating trafficking in persons. In January 2020, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Ministry of Defense, National Security and Policing was delegated the responsibility to administer Fiji's Anti-Trafficking Interagency Committee. We have formed this committee. If I may just very quickly mention the members of the committee: the Ministry for Women and Children, the Ministry of Employment, the SG's office, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Immigration, Police, Fiji Revenue and Customs Services, Mr. Speaker, sir. And we are open to all agencies, and on a need basis, upon invitation, we bring in CSOs and other organizations. And there are two key organizations that we also work with. One is the International Organization for Migration, and the other, Mr. Speaker, sir, is very lately the Asia Foundation is coming into the country, and one of their main objectives is to specifically help Fiji in our human trafficking mechanisms, Mr. Speaker, sir. But on the IOM, this is the International Organization for Migration, not only when it comes to illegal smuggling of people there, but they are very important to us as well when we have disasters. We work very closely with them because they deal with internally displaced and refugees as well. But in our cases, particularly post-disasters, mainly internally displaced people, Mr. Speaker, sir. So the work has been ongoing with the committee, and we are happy to say that we focus on government has also approved a national anti-human trafficking strategy and action plan as of the 16th of February 2021, and it focuses on prevention, protection, prosecution, and of course partnership as well. I've mentioned the organizations that we work with, apart from IOM and the Asia Foundation. Of course, we have our bilateral partners, and of course the International Organization for Migration, as I've stated, and the governments of US, Australia, and New Zealand as well. Finally, if I may just say, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have formed the committee, we have devised the National Action Plan and Strategy, and also, Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the key requirements is for us to have what we call a case management coordinator, so that all the reporting, all the activities are centralized, particularly when it comes to reporting, because it is a requirement that cases or those that become victims or survivor is provided with all and any necessary assistance that they may require. And if there are investigations, they must be supported and ensured that it goes all the way to prosecution. Mr. Speaker, sir, so far, with the establishment of the strategy and the case management coordinator, in the 2021-22 financial year, the case management coordinator has dealt with 2 referrals, and to date in this financial year we have received and dealt with 1 referral so far. And finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are at the last stages of finalizing a national referral mechanism that ensures that any and all likely cases of human trafficking are referred to the CMC. And of course, we need to maintain a consolidated database on the prevalence of human trafficking in Fiji, Mr. Speaker. I think I'll stop there in the interest of time, but there's a lot to cover in this. Feel free to honourable members, the committee under the chairmanship of the Permanent Secretary for Defence and National Security and Policing is always willing to give information and work with the authorities, work with the leadership of this country and the communities, so that we can all address these issues for the obvious reasons that I have stated, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Minister for his reply to the question.